We look for the green flag now, as there it is. And the 1988 Indianapolis 500, the 72nd running is underway. Danny Sullivan moves to the outside and then dives into the lead in the first turn. Danny Sullivan leads coming across the short chute, followed by Rick Mears, Al Unser, and now Al is being challenged by his son for third place. Mario Andretti drops to fourth. Danny Sullivan leads down the backstretch. Then Mears. Now watch this fight here. Yellow flag is out as a car against the wall. Roberto Guerrero, and it looks to be Scotty Brayton. A third car is there as well. On the first lap, exactly what is the most fearsome moment of the race, what we have feared, what everyone fears. The yellow flag is out. Less than a lap is complete, and the race is running under yellow.
Technically, this was not, of course, a crash on the start itself. It's out on the turns. The sound that we hear has nothing to do with the crash. It's the bombs that they send off after the start of the race.
Bobby, we're looking at the rescue crews. They are there. They're very fast to respond. And there is Roberto Guerrero out of the car. So we've seen both Brayton and Guerrero climb out of that car.
Well, the accident didn't look very serious. We haven't seen a replay yet, so we can't tell you exactly what happened. But it doesn't seem like it's a very serious accident. But it's just so easy. The first turn, the first lap is always a dangerous time of the race. And all it takes is one guy not to give just a little bit to the others until they get strung out. You touch just a little bit. We had one last year with Jose Legarza. It's a shame we had one today because it's too long a time for Roberto to be out for next year.
It's too bad about Guerrero. You know, he has finished the last 4 consecutive Indianapolis 500s.
All right, we watch here. Here is one angle. You can see up in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, coming off of the second turn. One car apparently losing it. Brayton and Guerrero go to the wall right in front of the corporate suites and slide along that wall. Dangerous situation here for Guerrero because he's pointed nose in, the softest part of the car. And look at that wheel bounce.
That can hurt you if a wheel comes up and hits you. And interestingly, as we have a look now from the race cam,
there's
Scott
Michael
Brayton.
Andretti's car. That's Scotty Brayton behind.
This may be the best coverage.
He's already started to lose it. Now he loses it sideways. Guerrero goes high. But that was the wrong direction as Scotty takes Guerrero to the wall.
Brayton lost it right on the painted lines, didn't he? Exactly what happened to Danny Sullivan 3 years ago. It's very hard with these cars, especially when the tires are still cold, to go over the paint without losing control.
There you see both cars locked up.
Not Guerrero's fault at all. He was taken out by Brayton, clear as a bell, wouldn't you say?
So perhaps, fortunately, they were not moving at full speed, and that may have kept this from being worse than it actually is. The tire bounces to a stop, and Roberto Guerrero and Scotty Brayton out of the race before one lap is complete. There is his crew. Disappointment is obvious, as the wreckers now at the scene of the accident. We'll be back with more coverage of the Indianapolis 500-mile race after this commercial and a word from our local stations.
ABC Sports exclusive live coverage of the Indianapolis 500 continues.
Well, we're back at the Indianapolis 500. 3 laps are complete, but they're being run under yellow as a result of an accident that destroyed this car and damaged 2 others. This is Roberto Guerrero's car, and right now his wife Katie is with Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, you heard early in our pre-race show that Roberto and Katie Guerrero had traveled a long way to get to Indianapolis, but it's turned out to be a short afternoon with that accident. And I'm with Vince Granatelli right now as we look at Katie Guerrero. And Vince, you've talked to Roberto on the radio, his condition and also what happened.
Well, all he said was that Brayton spun in front of him. I'd have nothing to substantiate anything right now. Happened in turn 2. We're here in the front straightaway. We can't see anything. I guess the main thing is at this point that he's okay, and it's obviously very disappointing for everybody here. And
it's awfully emotional. I mean, not only for Katie as she continues to be consoled below us, but also for the entire team. It was written all across your faces that this month of May in less than a lap has totally gone up in smoke.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Obviously, it's not a happy moment for us right now. We had some really high hopes here, and at this point, we're going to have to wait till next year. I guess that's the worst part.
Katie, I know it's a difficult time right now, but he's okay.
Yeah, that's the best. That's the main thing. That's the important thing. And we'll just have to give it a go again next year. It'll be a long year in waiting, but we'll get him next year.
First time that you've ever experienced this at Indianapolis. He's always finished. Can you describe the emotions right now?
It's just devastating, especially so early on. You know, it's just the last thing that you run through your mind, the worst scenario, going out like that. But we've had 4 good years before, and we'll have many good years ahead of us, I'm sure.
If there's a family, gentlemen, that believes in positive thinking, it's Roberto and Katie Guerrero, and they're going to have to believe awfully hard today. Back to you.
What a terrible disappointment, though. Twice he finished second, a third and a fourth. This is the first time he did not finish. Scott Brayton's car is on the hook there as well. And we mentioned a third car. It's the number 16 car of Tony Bettenhausen, also involved in this accident on the start. Now we're looking from Michael Andretti's car. You see Scott Brayton simply lost it, crossing the line, took Guerrero and Bettenhausen to the wall with him on the second turn of the first lap of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. So let's take a look now, Sam Posey, at this accident.
Paul, I have, I think, a different interpretation of the accident, because it looks to me as if Tony Bettenhausen, if we play this just a little bit more, I believe he is right here starting to lose it. In other words, he was not part of the accident which involved, you see there, the circle that I put around the car of Bettenhausen. In other words, he was not involved with the main accident per se. Whether he saw that ahead of him and that sparked a reaction, I don't know. But it's interesting that he, like Brayton, was driving over those painted lines at the time that he lost control. He's a real veteran of this race, though I think having his 8th or 9th start, Tony Bettenhausen, so it's a surprising thing that it happened.
Well, Bobby Unser, we've seen it, not one but 2 separate accidents. The first with Brayton and Guerrero, and then Tony Bettenhausen. Your analysis?
Well, the most likely scenario is there's been some fluids dropped on the pavement, on the racetrack. You can see the other cars, aside from the wreck, you can see the other cars going to the inside of the white line completely, so they're trying to get away from the fluids.
All right, so 3 cars out of the race, the first 3 positions already determined. At the Indianapolis 500, we continue under yellow with 4 laps complete. We'll be back. We're back at the Indianapolis 500. Lap number 5, and the green flag comes out once again. The yellow waved at the middle of the first lap, but now we are back racing as Rick Mears challenges his teammate Danny Sullivan going into the first turn. But Sullivan shoots ahead, coming off of turn 1. It is now Sullivan chased by Mears, and then a nice fight developing between the Unser family for 3rd position. Look at Sullivan pull away.
Well, everybody always wondered, did Penske have a game plan? If he has a game plan, it's just the opposite of what everybody thought. Danny Sullivan is racing Rick Mears just as hard as he can, Paul.
I'm not so sure. Would part of the game plan, Bobby Unser, be for Sullivan to be the rabbit and try to pull the field away?
Well, I really think what happens is they just have 0 game plan, and those guys are racing their own race. That's generally the way Roger does it.
Danny Sullivan accelerates now. Rick Mears is in pursuit. Down the main stretch at the Indianapolis 500, and you ride in the lead at the Indy 500 on board with Danny Sullivan as he comes through the first turn.
What did Sullivan just do? Did he pull one of his tear-offs off his visor to get better vision? Did he wave suddenly to the crowd with a clenched fist like, I'm leading the race?
He's given a signal to the pit, Sam, that he understood what they just said. He's just saying, hey, I heard you, with his hand.
Does that mean that the radios perhaps are not working right?
That could be. Radio's not very reliable here, as well as we all know.
Here is the battle for 3rd place. The defending champion, Al Unser, his son, Unser Jr., right behind.
Well, Al and his dad are really going at it. They have a race just like they were going for the lead. But I think that they're both kind of showing us that they've got 500 miles almost to go yet, Paul.
Well, we've talked about teams and whether or not teams will get together, but what about families? Have these 2 talked?
No, they definitely don't get together. There is no game plan with them at all, or between them. They actually run their own race. And in fact, at times, as we watch their racing, we wonder if they don't run a little bit harder.
You're watching the fight for 3rd place. Danny Sullivan leads it, chased by Rick Mears. This is Al Unser, the family Unser, Senior and Junior, as they fight for 3rd.
Now, if you're wondering why Junior doesn't pull up a little bit closer to his dad, one of the reasons is the turbulence that these cars give off makes it very hard to run close up behind another driver. And it isn't until you are determined to make the pass that you close in and really start to struggle in that turbulence.
Also, Sam, to add to that, if the car stays up close to the other one, say, for example, 3-5 laps, the engine starts running hot on the car behind because the air is no longer smooth coming back into the radiators.
And it's a hot day. I mean, so obviously that is a factor. However, it would seem as if the leaders at least are well spaced out, Paul. Right now, nothing volatile here. Everyone content with where they are in the early going.
Well, of course, after the yellow flag, they come back to the green flag single file. That gives them an opportunity to string out just a bit, and it gives a definite advantage to the leader, Danny Sullivan. He battled with Rick Mears for just a moment. Now Rick seems to have dropped back. He's about a second and a half behind the leader, Danny Sullivan. Then comes Al Unser as we take a look at a lap here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The guess was they would run at over 205 miles an hour. Let's see if that actually is true, as Danny Sullivan already is on the backstretch of this 2.5-mile oval, 50 feet wide at this point.
Sullivan, of course, is celebrating the fact that he has an open track ahead of him, and you see this fabulous view of it and also of the crowd, because he knows that within 3 to 4 laps, we may even see other cars on that main straight looking ahead of him, that he's going to start lapping the slower cars. And then this glorious run, leading the Indy 500 out all by himself, will be over and he'll be into traffic.
42.7 seconds.
210
Sullivan.
210-mile-an-hour lap. That is a little bit faster than we figured this early in the race, Paul.
Julie Nimi keeps time in the pits for Danny Sullivan. As we take a look at Danny Sullivan on the backstretch.
The speeds that we're looking at, top speed probably about 220. That's a little bit off what they qualified at 228 to 230 top speed, because they reset the wings and the chassis for more downforce in the race.
So Danny Sullivan begins to overhaul the back of the field, and Ludwig Heimrath Jr. just ahead. The question to Danny Sullivan is, are you more serious as a racer now than when you began to drive the Indianapolis cars?
Well, I don't know if I'd say I'm more serious. I think it's probably just changed. Obviously, at that stage when you're hungry and you're trying to get to that level where you're trying to gain everybody's respect and win some races and get established. And after you've won some races and they won Indianapolis, your hunger is a different kind. You realize what that success means, what it's all about, how great it feels, and you want more of it. But I don't know if I'd say that I'm really trying to establish or become more serious at that level.
Well, as you can see, Danny Sullivan now has his hands full, because already in just 13 laps, he has come up on the back of the 500 field and begins to work his way through traffic now.
Well, he certainly has. The race, for one thing, is a little bit faster than we expected, Paul, and there's been a little bit of mix-up with Mario not being as aggressive at the start as we thought he might be.
Let's go to the pits now, Jackaroo.
Paul, a couple of laps ago, you were speculating as to whether there was a problem with Danny Sullivan's radios. We've checked with Derek Walker behind me. He says no. The reason for that clenched fist, it seemed, from inside of Sullivan's car, Indianapolis 500 emotion. Back to you.
Well, the emotion of the Indianapolis 500 gets everybody, and apparently including the one very cool Danny Sullivan.
You know, I thought that was it. I know Danny pretty well, and I think he's saying, I'm leading this thing again. And incidentally, it's a guy to whom winning this race would mean a great deal. Danny is not a guy that's going to be around this sport forever. You see him here from our camera inside the cockpit. Look at his eyes as he checks the rear view mirror, then looks back out on the road ahead of him, which is coming at him at over 200 miles an hour. But he is going to retire, and it's not going to be all that far away. And I think a second Indianapolis victory would send him maybe on his way. And I asked him, you know, about retirement. He said, well, one plan I've got. I'm going to take all my trophies to a sculptor in Paris called Cesare and have them compacted into one rectilinear form. So he's already thinking ahead at the point.
So Danny Sullivan moving up through the field now. Because he's engaging slower traffic, his lap speed is dropping down. His last lap came at about 190 miles an hour, so it's fallen off considerably. Danny Sullivan still poking his nose in between other cars, and then jumps forward and comes out and around.
Paul, one of the main reasons he's slowing down right now is that he's into the traffic. He's lapping cars, which we totally expected him to do. The front cars go so fast early on. The rear cars have traffic all the time. Danny's been cleaned right to them.
And of course, when he threads his way through those slower cars, many of whom he doesn't know, he has to be very, very careful. Danny Sullivan leads the Indianapolis 500, followed by Rick Mears, and then Al Unser and his son, then Mario Andretti and Arie Luyendyk. As we watch Danny Sullivan work his way around the 2.5 miles of Indianapolis. Danny Sullivan has a 2.8-second lead over the second-place car of Rick Mears. We'll be back with more right after this.
The Indianapolis 500 is being brought to you by Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. Miller Lite, from great taste, there's only one light beer. And by Dianetics, the national self-help bestseller by L. Ron Hubbard.
We're back at the Indianapolis 500. The fight is for second place. Rick Mears, the first yellow car, then Al Unser, and then his son, as little Al tries to get Dad as they come onto the main stretch now. Slower traffic just ahead, and three drivers who are brilliant at holding on to that traffic just ahead. Little Al drops back just a bit. Big Al closes in on Rick Mears. A tremendous fight for second.
Boy, that is a fight. And here's Mario coming up behind. We're having a better race early in the race than I've seen in a long time, Paul.
So we're watching second, third, fourth, and fifth. Mario Andretti just off the edge. That white car off the edge of your screen as the front of the field begins to close down in second place. And here comes Al trying to come past Rick Mears, and little Al tries it as well. He's forced down onto the inside. Rick Mears holds on the high side. Look at that fight. Al Unser has second place now. Little Al has third. Rick Mears drops back to fourth, followed by Mario Andretti.
You can watch little Al. He's to the left trying to get some clean air. All he thinks he needs is a little bit of traction. He's going to go right by his father. Now, I have to think if there's something wrong with Rick Mears, well, probably, you look at Mario go by him. He's probably going to make an adjustment to his car when he comes to the pit, Paul.
So Mario Andretti comes past Rick Mears as well, and now Arie Luyendyk is lined up behind Rick Mears. So a new second place, while Danny Sullivan is now a full 6 seconds out in front of the second place car.
All right, so I think you have to say what is wrong with Rick Mears. Is it something mechanical and we're going to see the end of him soon? Or is it something in the handling? They just didn't guess right for today. And I think if it's that, and you see Roger Penske, he is in communication with Rick. Then when the first pit stops come up and they're not far away, then we'll see the first of the changes to Rick Mears' car. And if there's anybody out here today that's good at knowing what's wrong and what to do about it, it's Rick Mears.
All right, what could possibly be wrong with Rick's car? Let's go to the Penske pits and Jack.
Well, there's a lot of activity here in the Roger Penske-led pit for Rick Mears. What they are going to do is they are going to adjust the handling on the car, and they may very well bring him in the next 5 laps. There are what is called a wicker bill that goes on the wings. Well, they'll make some adjustments to that, possibly replace one to try and get better handling. Things are going to get hectic here in just a moment as you change 4 tires, add 40 gallons of fuel, and try to do it in 18 seconds, as well as readjust the handling on the car. Let's go back to you.
We watch Mario Andretti as he chases down Rick Mears. Now the wicker bill, Bobby. You actually helped develop it. Let's explain it.
Yes, that's a little tab. It goes on the back of the wings, either the rear or the front wing. And what it does is it generates about 1/3 more energy by having them on, but it does hurt straightaway speed. So what they do is a trade-off. Sometimes they make them as small as they can go to have a little bit more straightaway speed.
So Rick Mears, for a moment there, bobbled a car coming through the first turn. Mario caught up behind traffic now as he continues his pursuit.
And you know, all month it was Penske this, Penske that. People thinking that the Penske team would just pull out all 3 cars almost abreast of each other and pull away from the field. My point has always been, this is the Indy 500, where the unexpected has to be counted on. And as you can see now, the Penske team is already in bad trouble with their lead driver, Rick Mears.
Carry it further, the Indianapolis 500, where the unexpected is commonplace. Now, let's go down to the pits. Brian Hammonds is back at the hospital. Brian?
Paul, the news is good back here at the infield hospital. All 3 drivers, Scott Brayton, Tony Bettenhausen, and Roberto Guerrero, all have been checked out here at the hospital. All 3 are okay and will be released from the infield hospital here shortly. Paul, back to you.
Well, there couldn't be better news. There you see it, the Hanna Emergency Medical Center. Dr. Henry Bach and his staff keeping track of these drivers. It is mandatory that whenever there is an accident, they go to the hospital despite how good they say they feel.
A footnote.
As we watch Mario Andretti as he makes the challenge now, but Rick slaps the door shut.
A footnote, of course, to Guerrero's crash is that it happened within about 150 feet of that crash last September, which put him in the hospital unconscious for 17 days. So there's a part of this racetrack that Roberto Guerrero is not having much luck with.
So Mario Andretti now begins to move in a battle for 6th place. He comes around Rick Mears and picks up the 6th position. Fights all at the front of the field right now as Mario Andretti begins to make his move. You're on board now, looking over Mario Andretti's right-hand shoulder through the second turn. Slower traffic just ahead. He should be able to handle that rather quickly, and right behind, Rick Mears continues to try and keep up. So at the Indianapolis 500, it is Danny Sullivan that leads. And Mario Andretti has begun his move, but Danny leads by 11 seconds. We'll be back. We're back. 27 laps are complete at the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Danny Sullivan leads it by 15 seconds over the second place car. Currently, Mario Andretti. As Danny Sullivan streaks down the main stretch in the pits, Rick Mears heads for the Penske team and some Penske service. Now, will they be going for a change in the aerodynamics on the car? There's Rick Mears. The crew goes to work, led by Peter Parrott. No movement at the back of the car yet that I see, Bobby Unser. Maybe they're not going to. They're going to change the front wing.
What they're doing, Paul, is changing the stagger on the rear tires. That will have a lot to do with the way it handles, and they made an adjustment to the front wing.
So an adjustment to change the aerodynamics on Rick's car. Now, this car, number 6, Mario Andretti, they have displayed the black flag to him, and you can see the reason. He's spewing some vapor at the back of the car.
That's oil, Paul. Anytime it comes out blue, that's definitely oil. We just can't tell right now whether it's the transmission or the engine.
Bobby?
Sam Posey, what a devastating blow.
Oh, absolutely. But I just want to quickly make the point that Mario Andretti is running a Chevrolet engine, as are all the leaders in this race right now. Chevrolet engines have only once completed a 500-mile race. That one a less demanding race on the engine than this one. So there's a big question mark. All the Penske cars run Chevrolets, Mario, Little Al, and if it's a problem that might strike the rest of them, this race could be turned upside down in a hurry.
Okay, Sam, but just one quick note on that. The smoke is coming out awfully low. That's normally where the transmission, so it may be the transmission instead of the engine. Usually it comes out of the turbocharger, the engine, but not always. Let's see.
So Mario Andretti stays out. The smoke gets worse. Al Unser Jr. But look at this. As he comes along Little Al, he accelerates strongly. So either Mario is not aware. Here comes Danny Sullivan, the leader of the race, as he rolls into the pits. Second place.
It's
We'll go down,
interesting.
take over the lead, and that's Mario. Let's go to Jack.
Well, Danny Sullivan comes to service with the Penske team, and they go to work, adding 42 gallons of methanol fuel. Sullivan looks over to Derek Walker, his crew chief, for any hand signals as to how the work is going. They've checked everything over, and it's a very quick stop. He's off and away. Back up to you.
So Danny Sullivan rolls out, but the question is, will Rick Mears beat him into the lead? Because second place Mario Andretti came in. The officials checking that car now. They've apparently decided it's okay. Whatever the problem was, it's all right. They can go with it. So Mario Andretti rolls out of the pits, but remember, his time at Indianapolis has been one of incredible bad luck for 19 years. Sam Posey reports. Back at the 72nd Indianapolis 500. About 30 laps to go in this race. And as a result of the last series of pit stops, Rick Mears may have been joined on the leader lap by a number of other cars. And also important is that the officials have determined that going back to green on the 166th lap, car 20, that's Emerson Fittipaldi, passed another car, and so they are going to penalize him one lap. So a scrambling in the order here, and as they come past the line, we'll be able to determine what kind of vulnerability Rick Mears may have. There's Emerson Fittipaldi, and that's the one they say they're going to penalize.
Well, they've most certainly been going good, Paul. It's a shame to lose a lap, especially at this time of the race, because he doesn't really have a lot of chance to make it up. It was a very bad decision on Embo's part, it would appear.
He was up briefly to second place in this car, which he didn't really want to run in the race. It's a March car. He wanted to run a Lola car, which the team owned but could not, or felt they could not prepare quickly enough for the race. So Emerson started this somewhat at odds with his own crew, which is unusual for this very nice man.
So there's Emerson Fittipaldi. Let's go down to the pits and Jackaroo.
Well, Paul, it was a great move, a gambler's move on Roger Penske to keep Rick Mears out there. How quickly it turned out to be one that was going to pay dividends for them. They were calculating right behind me just how far they could run the string in that tank of fuel so that he would only have to make one final pit stop. They gambled, as Roger said he would, to see if maybe a caution would come out shortly and they could go the distance. They've been looking at Bobby Rahal's situation all day. They know that there's a problem there in as much as being able to go for fuel consumption. But they gambled, and it looks like they may come out a winner. Let's go back to you.
And the green flag flies. That's Rick Mears over to the far right of your screen as he comes down and inside Michael Andretti. Rick Mears leads the Indianapolis 500. In second place is Jim Crawford and Michael Andretti. Well, you're on board with Michael Andretti, who runs in third place right now. Now, the result of attrition during the pit stops, and Michael and his team have been able to move up, and they're now joined the fight at the front, but Rick Mears is leading the race.
So every time he passes somebody right now, Paul, he's putting a lap on him because Rick was almost a full lap ahead. He made that last pit stop, put him back in the same lap. Now he's gained his lap back again. He's definitely the one leading the race.
Roger Penske has a saying which he uses all the time. A foot has 12 inches. Don't go 11 inches and not go that last inch. That must be what he's thinking right now. They are starting to close in on victory at Indianapolis, and there's very little left here to go, and you know what's going through Roger's mind.
So Rick Mears leads it. Before that series of yellows and pit stops, Rick Mears was a full lap ahead of everyone. But with the stop, Jim Crawford has managed to move back up onto the leader lap, though he is 42 seconds behind Rick Mears. You ride with Michael Andretti. Started 10th, he's currently third.
And watch this ride, too. He was trying to slipstream the car in front of him, Bosell, and he built up speed. Now watch this. This is a classic move. He's made a good exit. He will start to close in as he comes down the straight because he doesn't have as much wind resistance as the car in front. But look, he just does not have enough speed. He waved by Rick Mears on the inside. That's presence of mind. He just doesn't have enough power, does he, Bobby?
The interesting thing you can see right there is how loose Raul Bosell is. His car just dancing around. The rear end's very light. In other words, got a lot of oversteer. Michael is very mad, as you can see, because Raul's holding him up. Just not competitive right now, and he thinks that Michael thinks that Raul's holding him up right now.
And he is. He takes him all the way down onto the grass and still can't get by him. And Michael is not a happy man.
He has to hope the officials will wave a blue flag, a passing flag, at Bosell.
This time of the day, I don't think
so
either. Paying attention to that passing flag.
They're looking at they're holding the passing flag. If this goes on for more than a couple more laps, maybe.
And you got to remember that blue flag with the yellow diagonal is really only an advisory. It tells you a competitor is following closely. It's not an order to move over and give way. Yellow flag flies. No indication as to why. We don't have a report of an accident on the track itself.
Pace car out.
So that's the good news.
Interesting thing right here. Bosell and Michael Andretti both have Cosworth engines, so Michael doesn't really have an advantage for passing down the straightaways.
The indication is that one of the cars tapped the wall and kept going, the 29 car of Rich Vogler. We'll look for confirmation of that. As the yellow flies again, the field now begins to close. Mario Andretti, finally, after a very long day and 2 incredibly long pit stops, is out of the Indianapolis 500-mile race.
Well, there are very few people who I think have had to put up with as much disappointment in sport as Mario Andretti. He has been competitive in this event ever since he came here as a rookie in 1965, and yet after time, and you see his son still in contention, Michael here, time after time, he has come close and only once won it. You know, I think if he'd won it more toward the middle of his career, it wouldn't have been so brutal, but he won it so early, suggesting he was going to win many more, and ever since it's been disappointment after disappointment.
Here's a great story. Jim Crawford, the number 15 car. He's not driven a race this season. He was injured here a year ago, went through a long period of therapy. And he's now running in second place on the same lap with the leader. Let's go down into Crawford's pits. Brian Hammonds is there.
Well, Jim may have caught a break with this yellow flag. He needs to make one more fuel stop, and they don't think Rick Mears needs to. He went by once. Now they gave him the sign to come in, so he should be coming in for his final fuel stop plus 3 tires the next time around. Paul?
Jim Crawford, the crew there, Bobby.
Well, the reason.
And another car into the wall.
That's Vogler, isn't it?
Well, it certainly looks like
By
it.
process of elimination, I think that, yes, it is
Yes,
Vogler.
it is, Rich Vogler.
Boy, has he had a physical day. Well, I made that prize fighter analogy.
2 times in a row. He obviously is having some bad problems there.
So it's yellow as Rich Vogler into the wall at the Indianapolis 500. And Rick Mears is still the leader, but now Jim Crawford has a chance to close up. We'll be back. We're back at the Indianapolis 500. This is Paul Page. You're looking at Roger Penske. He talks with Ken Anderson, one of his tacticians in the team, and wondering whether or not their car will win this Indianapolis 500. It is out in front at the moment. Now, we're under yellow once again as a result of an accident, this time involving Rich Vogler. And we'd mentioned, well, let's take a look at this accident first. There is Rich Vogler, and he is leading Jim Crawford here. Sam?
All right, but it's when we see the car from behind that we get a clue as to what might have happened to Rich Vogler, because we see a little smoke coming out of the back of the car. Right, focus on that. Now let the picture go, and you see that smoke in there. You can see how desperately he's turning the car at this
Sam,
point.
you're looking at front wheels going 2 different directions. It
Yes.
looks like a tie rod may have broken in the
Yes,
front.
we are. Yep, we are.
Now the smoke keep coming out of the back, Paul. He's obviously got some problems there. The engine looks like it just exploded, either the engine or the transmission.
No, Bobby, I think Paul's assessment was good. The front tires were not pointed in the same direction seconds prior to impact. I think the smoke we may have been seeing was coming from the tires underneath the car, possibly. He did not have proper alignment. Something broke in the front suspension. That, by the way, is the most terrifying thing that can happen to a racing driver, when the steering or anything in the front end goes, because you are absolutely
All right,
helpless.
look at the left front wheel, which is turning the proper direction on Rich Vogler's car, that car in the upper right-hand corner. But the right front is just continuing on. So something has broken in the steering mechanism on the car. See, the right front tries to turn out while the left front turns in, and he has no control whatsoever. Rich Vogler goes
That's
into the wall.
very obvious. That's
but
very
that
obvious.
other car was Jim Crawford, second place. How very close he came during that activity. Now, we'd mentioned that officially they had decided to penalize Emerson Fittipaldi, the number 20 car, 1 lap. Apparently now the officials of the race are reassessing that penalty. More evidence coming forward. They're talking it over again. They may give him the lap back.
It would be the first time a penalty like that had ever been assessed to Emerson, who tends not to be the kind of driver to push, to try to push an advantage unfairly.
Here's the Jim Crawford pits. Brian Hammonds is there.
Not going real well down here in the Jim Crawford pits. First of all, the scoring monitor is now gone out. Jim Crawford's radio to his crew is not working. If that's not hectic enough for poor Jim, his wife is very, very pregnant. She's due on Tuesday. She's watching this race up in the suites with her doctor. So pretty interesting day for the Jim Crawford crew. Paul?
Well, it has the potential of being a great week for the Jim Crawford family.
Just to restate, though, that he is driving this with a right foot that is still in great pain. I talked to him just the other day. He was standing by the pit wall with his cane, and I said, how do you feel? He said, I got a lot of pain in my right foot. Believe me, I'm not complaining, because only 2 months ago I couldn't walk at all. So from 2 months, unable to walk, to in and out of the lead at the Indy 500, Jim Crawford has got to have at least a light heart right now.
Sam, it appears right now that they put Emerson Fittipaldi back up into second place, or reinstated that lap they took away from him. So that puts him in first, in second. Jim Crawford in third right now.
Well, here comes Rick Mears as the green flag flies again, and by reinstating that lap, that puts Emerson Fittipaldi in second place on the leader lap, and just 10 seconds back as they come to the green from Rick Mears. Jim Crawford moves down to third. There's that white and red machine. That is the 20 car of Emerson Fittipaldi. Back up into second place as they recalculate that lap and that penalty.
Emerson told me the other day, I love this race, Sam. He said, so much. I would like to come back here year after year after year and compete in it. He, of course, won the World Championship twice. He has won IndyCar races, but never Indy. This may be the best moment in his life, the last 8 to 10 years since he withdrew from Grand Prix racing.
Important to remember is while he has not won Indy, he won a 500-mile race at the Michigan 500. So he very definitely is capable of winning one of these races.
He has the savvy, and the Pat Patrick team, which has backed him up, of course, was the architect of that great victory by Gordon Johncock over Rick Mears back in 1982. So once again, it's the Pat Patrick team represented by Emerson Fittipaldi here versus the Roger Penske team represented by Rick Mears. An age-old rivalry between two car owners have really put a lot into the sport.
Yes, and remember, Sam, most people don't think Emil's an oval track driver. But some days he has good days, and this certainly looks like one of them.
I'll tell you what he is. He's very definitely a savvy driver. He knows how to win races. He knows how to save the car to the end of the race. And we have come up on 18 laps from the finish of the Indianapolis 500. And this is a crucial time now. They are all running just as fast as they can.
I'll tell you, Emerson is having the kind of day your brother Al had this time last year, Bobby. Well back in the early going, but kept coming at it, and now he's suddenly a front runner.
He's been in traffic all day. It's been hard for him to get out and get some of that nice clean air, like some of the rest of them. Rick Mears, for one, has had all day, but it's showing up now at the end of the race for him.
All right, down in the Patrick pit, here's Jackaroo.
This is Pat Patrick, who's the car owner of Emerson Fittipaldi's car. Pat, great news that the USAC has decided to put you back in second position.
Well, we talked to Emerson, Jack, and he says he didn't pass the car on the yellow. He went by, and the guy went back behind him, so we feel we're very comfortable.
Now, the question, though, is, as I understand it, USAC has also informed you, though, that after the race, they will take a look at the scoring tapes. Is that correct?
Well, that's what they say, but doesn't mean much after the race, does it?
That's the story from the Pat Patrick pit. Gentlemen?
Emerson Fittipaldi, his driver, runs in second place right now, 10 seconds behind Rick Mears.
All right, engines, the engine story. Chevrolet engines are currently running first and second. And what does that mean? Will that have an instant effect, you suppose, on Chevrolet sales? I rather doubt it. I think that people out there realize these are highly specialized cars and don't have all that much connection with passenger cars. But what I think will happen is much further down the road, Chevrolet became involved with this for engineering reasons rather than PR goals. They knew there were things about fuel economy and lightness that could eventually trickle down to their production engines. And I think what is going on today will bear fruit 5, 6, 7 years from now.
Rick Mears, the leader of the race. Chevy powered, a Penske PC-17.
Yes, that's Rick. Getting along really nice. He should, without any problems, be able to cruise home to a nice victory today. Behind him, a heck of a battle going on. Emo's changing around. We've got Big Al, we've got Jim Crawford. There's an interval coming between Rick Mears
and Emerson Fittipaldi. We watch for Fittipaldi. Approaching the line now. There, 14 seconds back. Emerson Fittipaldi lies back from Rick Mears.
Huge lead. You know, Penske has won 5 of the last 9 Indy 500, but only twice has he done so with his own cars, and the last time was back in 1981. There's a lot of car building pride on the line if Penske is able to win this race.
His cars, manufactured in Poole, England, have not done well in the past 4 years, and this year, well, Rick Mears probably would have been a hands-down winner at Phoenix had it not been for an early accident. And now here at the Indianapolis 500, Rick Mears may in fact be looking at his 3rd Indianapolis 500-mile race crown.
Well, it certainly is, and here comes Fittipaldi. He isn't gaining on Mears. He just would need some sort of problem from Rick Mears for him to pass him. But he's there, he's competitive. Pat Patrick is not going to give up. Emerson Fittipaldi is certainly not giving up. There's Chris Mears. He's worried, Paul.
Fittipaldi maintaining approximately the same interval that he has the past several laps behind Rick Mears. 14.8 seconds back now. And 19 seconds behind that is the 15 car of Jim Crawford. There is Greg Penske giving the board to their leader. That's Roger Penske Jr. actually handling the board. telling Rick he's 15 seconds out in front of the Indianapolis 500. And he's turning laps at nearly 201 miles an hour.
Well, what we're seeing right now, the difference between owning and building your own cars, as Penske does, and buying them, as Pat Patrick does, for Emerson Fittipaldi, is making itself clear. When you buy a car from a manufacturer, your car is only as good as what they can sell you, and that design tends to be frozen months before the season begins so that a production run of cars can be made. In the case of a car, when you build it yourself, you can keep making those changes right up to the last minute, which is precisely what the Penske team, under the direction of Nigel Bennett, their designer, has been doing all month. There's Chris Mears, his wife, starting, I would say, to tense up a little bit.
We have alluded to times and speeds and penalties throughout the running of this race. We all should be reminded that they are all unofficial until they have time overnight. As soon as they're done with the race, the scoring team, timing and scoring crew under the direction of Art Graham, go to work and audit the race. They actually run the race on paper with all the replications of timing slips that they have. You can see now they're showing Rick Mears, and he is beginning to pull away from second place with 11 laps to go at the Indianapolis 500 the next time he comes around.
Just telling Rick that he's got 17 seconds on the nearest place behind him, the closest one, second place, and he's only got 15 laps left. And you can see by the worried look on Chris Mears' face that it's as hard towards the end of the race, or even harder, than it is early in the race, from worry about your driver going to finish.
The driver sees, as we see the relationship back to Emerson Fittipaldi, beautiful shot as he comes down the pit straight. That shot from inside the track, of course, looking out. But when the driver sees those pit signals, he's also receiving the same information via his radio. And when you have the visual confirmation of what you're doing and you hear it at the same time, it's a fantastic sense of being in control. And right now, if there's a problem that Rick Mears has, it will be that his emotions will rise up too much inside of him. You have to keep these things under control.
You can watch Emmo as he went around that last turn, how well he's sticking. Emmo's been pretty good all day. It's like we said earlier, he's just been in too much traffic.
But he isn't going to catch him on speed. It would have to be something untoward now. Agreed, Bobby?
No,
in fact, if there was a yellow, for example, and they bunched up, I think Rick still has the speed over Emerson, don't you?
Oh, he certainly does.
Yeah.
Rick has had the speed over everybody with the exception of Danny. And of course, Rick had problems earlier on the race, as we've all watched, but he's in there now and he's handling good.
There's a fascinating perfection to the 500-mile distance, isn't there, Paul? I mean, we've seen so much go on through the race, and yet suddenly the dust has cleared, the stage is set, and the man that really has been fastest all month is pulling away in the Indy 500.
A very clear view of the Indianapolis 500 now. 3 men on the leader lap. Rick Mears has completed his 191st, just 9 to go. Emerson Fittipaldi, 17 seconds back, and Jim Crawford rides in 3rd place on the leader lap with Rick. Let's go to Jackaroo.
Chris, how are the butterflies?
Oh, they're going by the minute. We have 8 laps to go, and I just want to get this over with, and I want him to win the race.
Well, that's the story from down here. Believe me, the butterflies are bullets. Back to you.
Now the question is, will Rick Mears become a 3-time champion and join that rather elite group? And if he does, what does that hold in store for Rick Mears? He is, after all, only 36 years old. He holds the potential of being the first 5-time winner of the Indy 500 or 6-time winner.
3 years ago, I made the prediction that when all the dust settled, Rick Mears would be the great champion of Indianapolis, that he would have more wins at the time he retired than anyone else. Of course, he's had to come very close a couple of times recently without managing to win the thing. But a 3rd win today would start to make that possibility look more like a reality. You know, Roger Penske, great thing. What is he feeling right now? He says, I always come to Indianapolis as if I have never won it. So you're not saying, here's a man who's won it a number of times and this is business as usual. He is going to be very, very excited if this car wins the race.
Let's remember, Sam, Emmo still could win this race. Looks like Mears is going to win it, no doubt. He's definitely the fastest, but Emmo is in 2nd place, charging hard. And when you look at Patrick and Penske in that scene we just saw, you know there's 2 of the old biggie car owners.
Well, Bobby, I've got to point out to you, you just said it looks like he's going to win it, no doubt. More times than not, the man who leads at lap 180 does not win the Indianapolis 500. Statistics will bear that out. Rick Mears leads at the moment. Is it a 50th victory for the Penske crew, a third Indianapolis win for Rick Mears and for his chief mechanic, Peter Parrott. Already they've begun to assemble the area that the winner will pull into, but who will it be? Emerson Fittipaldi is in pursuit. Let's go to his pits now, and Brian Hammond.
So Fittipaldi, what's going through your mind right now? Your husband's in second place.
I can't tell you how nervous I am right now, you know. I hope he finished really good.
Can he catch Rick Mears?
Yeah, I think so.
She's confident she can, Paul Page.
Well, now we're getting an entirely different piece of information coming from the officials of the race. They are telling us that they are going to assess the penalty that we have discussed against Emerson Fittipaldi. After reviewing some information on that particular situation, coming to the yellow, there's Pat Patrick, the car owner. I'm not sure that he knows yet, but this car will suddenly, with a flick of the switch on a computer, be transferred one lap back. That bad for Emerson Fittipaldi, but will be good for Jim Crawford, who with that Buick-powered machine will move up into second place with just 5 laps to go for Rick Mears.
We started the race with 3 Penskes on the front row of the grid. One was eliminated when Sullivan crashed. Al Unser Sr. has dropped back and is not in contention. 1 car is left. Did you see it right there?
All right, let's go down to Pat Patrick's pits.
Paul, we are with Pat Patrick, and he just found out that he has been, the penalty will stand, Mr. Patrick. What do you think?
Well, I don't believe it. It's a typical USAC sanctioning body. It's screwed up. We'll protest it. I'm not concerned about it.
You think you can overturn it?
Beg your pardon?
You think you can overturn it?
Oh, sure, because he didn't pass out.
The second place car, Jim Crawford, is in the pits now. Second place as a result of them moving Emerson Fittipaldi 1 lap down and back into 7th. So Jim Crawford is in the pits, and Al Unser Sr. comes by and picks up second place. As they work on the left front of the car, Al Unser has moved into second place. It's now the Penske cars 1 and 2 at Indianapolis.
Penske has won this race in 1972, in 79, in 81, in 84, in 85, in 87.
And look, on board Michael Andretti's car, the upper cover of the right side pod is blowing and trying to rip off of the car. Michael Andretti runs in third place right now. Here comes Jim Crawford roaring out of the pits. Bobby, I told you, it's not over until the checkered flag flies. And this race, while being dominated by Rick Mears, is still very active.
Not only that, now that will cause a yellow flag.
Yep. And they'll bunch up, and it'll be a trophy dash between
yellow
the
flag.
two. Yep.
We saw it. We anticipated. The piece came up on the main straightaway. The yellow flag comes out, and it's going to be a sprint to the finish of the Indianapolis 500. We are on lap number 197, just 3 to go.
The Indianapolis 7.5 miles left to run.
And it looks like if they can control the field properly, we may come back for a single lap run to the green flag. We've seen a 2-lap run when Bobby Rahal passed with just 5 miles to go Kevin Cogan in 1986. Now, what will we see today?
They're going to be awfully hard. There's 2 laps left, Paul. It's going to be awfully hard to pick up that piece, organize the pace car, get rid of all the equipment on the racetrack, and go green. So I have to guess at the moment the race may finish under the yellow.
2 laps to go. Another part falls off the back of one of the trucks coming out to service. This problem on the main straightaway.
So right now, Rick Mears in that cockpit, he's hovering between the emotion of thinking that he may be able to win this without really having to push anymore. He'll win it under the yellow, and realizing that if they can get the track clean fast enough, he's going to have to drive it all out for his life for 1 lap.
Rick Mears, right behind the pace car, right behind Rick is Jim Crawford. But Rick Mears is well out in front. So yellow flag with just 5 miles now separating Rick Mears from his 3rd Indianapolis 500-mile race championship. Can they clear the track fast enough? And if they do, can anybody catch Rick Mears? Bobby, I suspect that you are right. It looks like Rick Mears can coast now to his 3rd Indianapolis 500-mile race win.
Remember, Paul, we still worry about the cars on the yellow. That's when they develop the most heat inside the engines. He still could have a problem. We don't want him to. We certainly don't. but nonetheless, it could happen. You can tell by the look on Penske's face, by Chris's face. They're worried about the same thing. If you could see inside of Rick, he's worried about the same thing.
Al Unser in second place. No, Jim Crawford now, they report.
They can't make it to the green. Paul, we're 199 laps right now.
So effectively, the Indianapolis 500-mile race at 80 miles an hour for Rick Mears has come to an end.
Rick always says that he thinks of his driving as a way that he can pay the crew back for the job that they've done, and listen to that crowd. But did you also see the way he almost waved them away? He said, don't clap for me yet. Don't clap yet. It's not quite over. And he's right.
The 500 has never finished this way. It has finished under yellow with rain. The 199th lap being run out. Roger Penske holds his breath for one very long lap. Rick Mears stares down at the ground. Listen to the crowd.
We never like to see a race finish under the yellow, but you can't say this hasn't been one of the nicest races we've ever seen, Paul.
And you can't say that it wasn't decisively won by the man currently leading. You know what I mean? The yellow did not change the order of things.
So on to the main straightaway, the fourth and final turn. The final lap now being completed. The pace car will actually see the checkered flag first. And there is the checkered flag alongside the yellow. Rick Mears has won his third Indianapolis 500, and Chevrolet has won at Indy.
Rick is one happy person. Three-time winner, another one of the elite group of three-time winners. Look at Fred, Penske. Penske just continues to set records.
Rick Mears won the Indy 500, only the second time he ever raced here. What a prodigy of the Speedway.
Second place in an amazing run, Jim Crawford. Third place, Al Unser, the defending champion. Unofficially, Michael Andretti being shown in fourth place and Bobby Rahal in fifth, followed by Raul Boesel and Emerson Fittipaldi. But car number 5, Rick Mears, has won the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Rick Mears wins it at an average speed of 144.8 miles an hour. We'll be back with more coverage of the Indianapolis 500 after this commercial and a word from our local station.
ABC Sports exclusive live coverage of the Indianapolis 500 continues.
I'm Jack Carruth in Victory Lane. Rick Mears getting the congratulations of his crew. Rick, how does it feel, number 3?
Hey, what, it feels great. They've asked me, which one was the best of the first two, and the second one was the best. And I've got to say today that the third one's even better. I can't explain it. The guys just did a tremendous job. We had a little trouble, and early on and got down lap, and that just shows how tough the guys were. They turned us around and got us going and got us back up that lap, and then even a lap above. So, the Chevrolet just ran beautiful all day, and the guys did a tremendous job.
They've said all month that you may very well be the perfect race car driver for Indianapolis. After this performance today, coming back from adversity, coming back up on top, what were your thoughts in the final couple of moments when you saw the yellow flag come out?
Well, I knew that unless there was really something, we were so close to the end that, even if they went green, we could go pretty good and pretty easy and get it across. It was just a matter, when something like that happens, you hate to change your pace. You got to set rhythm going, and you even hate to start backing off when you've got a lead there at the end, because you hate to change anything that's the way you've been doing all day long. So it gets a little bit nerve-wracking, and then when you see that yellow like that, you think, oh no, now here's another change. But you're just hoping that it doesn't change anything on the car, and it did, and everything worked great.
Hey, you've been so laid back, kick back California style all month here. Now, when are you going to finally let loose?
Well, I'd say probably tonight.
I imagine that in the Penske team there will be one whale of a party tonight, gentlemen.
Maybe now.
Maybe right now. Let's go back up to you.
So Rick Raven Mears has won his third Indianapolis 500-mile race. Rick Mears wins the Indianapolis 500, and for those of you tuned in for the golf, well, it'll be coming up next. But for the moment, the celebration in Victory Lane as Rick Mears, at an average speed of 144 miles an hour, wins the Indy 500. Well, we're back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The race is run. The engines are quiet now. 200 laps completed by Rick Mears. 500 miles, averaged 144.8 miles an hour. It's unofficial. We look at the order of finish of the race. Let's go down to the pits again, Brian Hammers.
Paul Page, you just can't say enough about the drive of this man, Jim Crawford. This man's feet are literally, the crowd is going crazy. The man's feet is literally held together by pins and screws after a terrible accident here last May. This is his first race back, second place. Congratulations.
Thanks very much. I'm happy for the Buick people that have, well, A, we've done all those miles of testing, and B, they stuck with me while I was injured, so I feel very happy for them. They deserve it.
What about your feet? Did you feel any pain out there?
They probably hurt like hell, but I won't notice it for an hour or so now, I don't think.
Were you ever competitive with Rick Mears? Do you think you could have caught him?
No, he came past me early on in the race, and there was nothing I could do. I was using all the road and a bit, and that was all I could do. That was as fast as I could go, so, you know, my hat's off to him. He did a great job.
One bad thing about it, your car owner, Kenny Bernstein, can't be here to enjoy it. He's racing himself down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I hope he does better than me.
That's going to be awfully hard to do. Jim Crawford, a second place finish in today's Indianapolis 500. Paul?
Well, Brian, this was the scene just moments ago as Rick Mears, for the third time, pulled into victory lane at the Indianapolis 500 to receive the Borg-Warner Trophy. The unofficial results to the moment. We'll be back with more right after this. Back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, this 2.5-mile oval, the roar of engines now complete. Rick Mears has won his third Indianapolis 500-mile race. 1979, 84, and now he wins once again as Rick Mears proves that he is a dominant race driver in the Indy cars. The giant crowd, many of them will stay for another hour or two. Others already have headed for the exits. They can report that they watched Rick Mears win his third Indianapolis 500-mile race. You can see many staying in the grandstands. And we have an opportunity to look back over the month of May for the Penske team through the eyes of electronic artist Joni Carter. We'll take a look at that. And as we do, we'll also take a look at the unofficial results of the 72nd running of the 500.
Day one with the Chevrolet engine, it was going to be.
Your attention, please. The track is open for qualification.
At it, it's one car and one team.
I'm sure there should be a Chevrolet, you know, the checkered flag to finish. Which Chevrolet?
You can say, well, you got the fifth one.
Rick and all his guys and Big Al, just the whole team, because this is for sure a team effort from everybody.
A magnificent month at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway ends with Roger Penske and Rick Mears scoring yet another victory. Let's take a look at the unofficial results of the Indianapolis 500. Mears, Jim Crawford, his first race of the season. Now remember, none of these are official until 8:30 tomorrow morning when they are posted. You've already heard there is some controversy. Great finish for Phil Kruger. He has to be complimented. Kept with it all day. Arie Luyendyk and Dick Simon, oldest man in the race, rounds out the top 10. So the engines are quiet. The race is done. The Indianapolis 500 is over, and Rick Mears is the winner. The 72nd running of the Indianapolis 500 was brought to you by the heartbeat of America, today's Chevrolet. By Goodyear Eagle Tires. Goodyear, because there really is a difference. And by Miller High Life. Brewed to be smooth, never bitter. Takes time to make. time to enjoy. The executive producer of the Indianapolis 500 is Jeffrey Mason. Produced by Bob Goodrich and Ben Harvey. Directed by Don Ohlmeyer and Roger Goodman. Technical directors, John Fighter and Richard Drummond. Associate producers, Ned Simon and Emily Deutsch. Associate directors, Norm Samet, Jeff Cohan, Vince D'Addario, and Jaime Bravo. Coming up next, it's live final round coverage of the Memorial Golf Tournament presented by Dean Witter. Top golfers will compete for over $1 million in prize money on the course that Jack Nicklaus built. It's coming up next right here on ABC Sports. Tomorrow night, it's the season premiere of ABC's Monday Night Baseball. 4 of baseball's top teams square off when the Los Angeles Dodgers battle the first-place New York Mets, or the New York Yankees take on the front-running Oakland A's. Check local listings for the game in your area. Action begins live at 8 o'clock Eastern tomorrow night only on ABC Sports. Now, let's pay tribute to the ABC engineering staff who helped bring you the pictures and sound of the 72nd running of the Indianapolis 500. Aerial camera facilities provided by Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. This has been a presentation of ABC Sports.